Hello everyone. Okay, so today this video, let's do Congress. I'm gonna go over some of the basic concepts, basic structure, why it's important to know about these things. So Congress is the legislative branch of government. Congress is made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives has 435 members. The Senate has 100. The Senate has 2 members from each state, and the House of Representatives, the number of representatives each state gets is decided based upon the population of that state, meaning the more people a state has, the more representatives that state gets in Congress. There are a total of 535 Congress people when you add 100 and 435. I think I said 535, right? Okay. What does Congress do? Well, it's the legislative branch, so it passes bills, which the president then signs or does not sign into laws. It passes laws, though they don't become laws until the president signs them. Anyway, passes bills. The way our bicameral Congress works, bicameral, separate, instead of a unicameral Congress. Basically, Congress is split into 2 houses instead of just being one body. There are 2 bodies of Congress. A bill has to pass both the House and the Senate with the exact same language. Once it does that, it can go to the president, and the president can sign it or veto it. Okay. You can watch the Schoolhouse Rock video on this, which is linked on the PowerPoints. So there are 435 members in the House and 100 members in the Senate, and there are these bills being introduced, and people want to debate these bills and things like that. Seems like it would get a little heavy, right? A little hard to do with all those people. If there's a lot of commotion, you need to be organized to get the work of Congress done, right? So, Congress is organized, or each house of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives, is organized by a committee system. There are standing committees, select committees, and conference committees. Standing committees are committees that always exist. They are in each new session of Congress. There's always the, as I demonstrate, the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. There's always a Senate committee and a House committee on human, something related to health and human services. It might be called the Health and Human Services Committee. There's always going to be a committee on energy and the environment. There's always going to be a committee on national security. Select committees, those are standing committees. Select committees are committees that are created by Congress for a specific reason, for a specific amount of time. So let's say the House of Representatives says, let's create a committee specifically to look at our budget deficit. Let's, not go through the normal budget committee channels. This committee is going to be created just to look at how to reduce the budget deficit. They'll create that committee, and that committee's whole job, the members of that committee, are to do that one thing. So that's how Congress is organized. Committees are very, very powerful, and the head of the committee is extremely powerful and extremely influential. How do we decide who gets on a committee and who does not get on a committee? And how do we decide who's the head of the committee? The head of the committee, which sets the rules of the committee, which runs committee meetings, which can set the agenda of a committee, things like that. How do we decide who's on those things? Well, the party that has the majority control of the House or the Senate gets to decide who is the chairperson of the committee. The chairperson holds a lot of power since they hold a lot of sway in setting the agenda and bringing bills up before the committee for vote, for discussion, debate, amendment. They can, set rules to cut off debate and have a vote and things like that. So the party that's in power gets to set the head of each committee. Now, each committee, let's say the, it's on the screen, the Standing Committee of the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Democrats are in control, 55 to 45, I guess, right now. In the Senate, the Democrats would get to, one, appoint somebody to be the committee chair of that Foreign Relations Committee, and also Democrats would get the majority number of seats on the committee. So let's say there are 10 seats, the Democrats would get 6 and the Republicans would get 4, and the committee chair would be a Democrat. How do people get assigned to committees? People get assigned to committees based upon the party leadership. So Harry Reid is the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and Mitch McConnell is the leader of the Republicans. If you're a Democrat, if you're a Senate Democrat and you want to be on a committee, you've got to go to Harry Reid and say, hey, I want to be on this committee. Harry Reid and other senior party people will eventually sort out who gets on what committee. And because being on a committee can be such a powerful thing, oftentimes people will be on committees that have some special interest to their state. So if you're from Iowa, you're probably going to want to be on the agricultural committee in either the Senate or the House, because that issue matters a lot to Iowans. If you're from New York City and, like the city part of New York City, I think I said New York City, so that makes, you're going to want to be on the, Housing and Urban Development Committee, or, the equivalent committee that does housing and urban development. More than likely. If you're also in New York, you may want to be on the Foreign Security Terrorist Committee or whatever. So you're going to try and get on those committees, and oftentimes the leaders of the House and the Senate will give members of their party seats on the committee, either in exchange for votes on issues, for reasons of seniority, or because their seat may be sort of a contested seat, and if the person holds a powerful committee chair, it means that that seat is going to has a better chance of being held for that party. So let's say you're a Democrat from Iowa and you win the Senate race 51 to 49%. Okay. I'm the senator from Iowa, by the way. I'm going to decide. When I get to the Senate, Harry Reid's probably going to say, you're from Iowa and you barely won your Senate race, I'm putting you on the Agricultural Senate Committee. Because on the Agricultural Senate Committee, I can sort of, quote unquote, bring home the bacon. I can help set policy for corn, because that's what Iowa does, right? Corn. I can help direct agricultural subsidies to people in my state. I can make sure that the federal government doesn't stop giving agricultural subsidies, things like that. So in 6 years, when my Senate seat comes back up again, I can go to the people of Iowa, and maybe more importantly, the rich people of Iowa who understand how important it is to have somebody on a committee that's related to their interest, and say, hey, I'm your senator and I'm on the agricultural committee, which is really important to your business and to your livelihood and your work, and I've worked hard to make sure that, or I've been directly involved in making sure agricultural subsidies don't stop flowing from the federal government, which benefits Iowans all the time, which will make me more likely to get elected, even if I barely got elected the first time. So maybe the second time, one, it's easier for an incumbent to win. But not only am I an incumbent, but I'm an incumbent with a powerful committee position based upon the sort of what's the biggest issue in my state. I'll be more likely to win, so maybe I'll win 55-45% this time. I don't know, if I'm lucky. So the way laws or bills happen, a House or Senate member writes a bill and introduces it to whatever chamber they are. Let's say it's a representative in the House of Representatives. And let's say that person's me again, because I like to have power. Okay, so I'm a member of the House of Representatives from the great state of Florida. And I write, again, a bill to save the manatees. And I submit it to the House. Write my name on it, submit it to the House. I send it to the Speaker of the House and, the Speaker's clerk workers of the House, really. They look at the bill, look it over, decide what committee it should go to. The bill to save the manatees would probably go to the environmental, whatever the Environmental Protection Committee is in the House, the Environment Oversight Committee or whatever. There it will be debated, added to, subtracted from. Things will get changed. It may go down to a subcommittee specifically on manatee-related issues in the environment. They'll debate it and they'll send it back up to committee. Then the committee will vote for or against the bill. The bill will be reported out. If it's voted down, it can still be quote-unquote reported out, sent out to the House. But if it's voted down, then it's going to have a negative report and it won't go anywhere. If it gets reported out with a favorable, voted up, raise the roof up. If it gets voted up, then there's a likelier chance the House will take it up and vote for it or against it. However, I'm a Democrat from Florida and I want to save the manatees, and the head of the Environment Committee in the House is mean old smokes a lot Paluda-McGuddy from the terrible state of Mississippi, a Republican. That guy, Republican, what did I say, smokes a lot Paluda-McGuddy, will probably try his best to bottle that bill up in committee, make it die in committee. He'll let it sit on the agenda and never really take it up, not do anything with it. He may send it down to the subcommittee and just let them sort of tinker with it, and then when it gets back up to him, if it even does get back up to him, he'll let it sit there and not discuss it, instead occupying the committee's time with other things that he considers appointments, since he's the head of the committee and gets to set the agenda. So there's that. And this gets to a point that could be important for the exam, that I want to make about how small differences and changes in the leadership of Congress can have major effects. So there are 435 members in the House of Representatives, 218 to 27. Okay, so let's say there are 218 Republicans and 217 Democrats. That's Republicans control the House, but by one vote. That means Republicans get to set all the heads of the committees throughout Congress. Those committee heads can decide what they're going to focus on, how they're going to run their committee. One of the important functions a committee has is to hold oversight over executive agencies. So Congress passes laws that tells the executive branch, the president's branch, with the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Energy, etc., what they are going to do. Now, the Department of Energy is going to carry out however it feels it's going to carry out the legislation Congress passes, but through its interpretation of the legislation. And if the Department of Energy is doing something that Congress doesn't like, or Congress is investigating some energy scandal that the Department of Energy might be involved in, Congress, the Department of Energy, the Energy Committee in the House, is going to decide whether or not they're going to investigate the scandal or investigate what the Department of Energy is doing. Who leads the committees can make something a scandal out of thin air if they want to. So when you have 218 to 217 Republican majority, a one-vote majority, even though that doesn't seem like a lot, that's very, very minor. It can have huge effects down the lines, because now Republicans are in control of all those committees, and if there's Barack Obama in the White House, a Democrat, there will be heads of the committees that will be very willing to find or invent any type of flaw or scandal in the White House that they can find to, pull people before the pull people from the departments in front of the congressional committee to embarrass them or to ask tough questions and things like that. They can also, as I said, bottle up legislation, even if it's got a majority support in the House. Let's say all 217 Democrats and 5 Republicans support a bill, so it would pass if it was brought up. Since the Republicans control the committee, if the person who's in control of the committee does not like the bill, they can bottle it up in committee. Or if the committee members even who are majority Republican, because the Republicans control the House, if they don't like a bill in that specific committee, they can bottle it up so that it doesn't get to the House floor for a vote, even though it would pass. So that one vote difference makes a very minor difference, makes a huge difference down the line. And the same thing happens in the Senate. Now, if the next elections roll around and the Democrats pick up 1 seat, so now the Democrats hold the majority, they have 218 votes to the Republicans' 217 votes. That's going to cause, even if it's just 1 vote difference, that's going to cause a massive change in the House's agenda, in the way the House conducts its business, and what the House looks at, what the committees do, what the committees are concerned about, because now there'll be Democrats controlling all of those committee chairs. So now where you have Smokes a Lot Pollution McGuddy, Republican from the wretched state of Mississippi, control of the Environment Committee. You have hippie tree-hugging plants are people and have rights to vote McGuddy from Oregon heads the Environmental Committee now. The difference in those two people holding the Environmental Committee chairpersonship can create huge differences. When before the committee is bottling up my Save the Manatees bill, now not only is my Save the Manatees bill flowing to the House, also Flowers Are People Too comes out of the committee for some reason and is voted up, or is given to the House for an up or down vote. whereas Smokes-a-Lot is going to bring the EPA in before his committee and yell at them for saying Duke Energy can't put coal ash in the Dan River. Smokes-a-Lot is going to bring... Yeah, so the Environmental Protection Agency says Duke Energy can't put ash in the Coal River, and Smokes-a-Lot's going to say, Environmental Protection Agency, you're being totally unreasonable. You must stop. You must allow Duke Energy to put coal ash in the Dan River. Now with tree hugger Plants Are People from Oregon as the head of the Environment Committee chair, the head honcho of the Environment Committee, he's going to bring the EPA in and say, did y'all step on a blade of grass when you walked in? How dare you? You should rope off all grass fields to let them grow free and natural. Yay. And the heads of the committees, based upon what they bring in an executive department person for, can make a huge difference in how the executive agency, the department, so for the Environmental Protection Agency, for example, how they go about their business. Because Congress, one of its powers is to control the purse, the power of the purse. They give funding to the executive branch agencies so they can do their work. If a congressional committee, like the the Committee for the Environment in the House says, you know what, I don't think the Environmental Protection Agency needs the amount of money it's requesting. We're going to suggest that the House budget only give them $5 million instead of $15 billion. And we're going to say that the Environmental Protection Agency should only spend that $5 million on providing Duke Energy trucks to dump coal ash into the Dan River. That, is going to influence what the Environmental Protection Agency does, because if they don't do what the Congressional Committee wants, they could see their funding cut, they could see their mission change, and thus they're influenced by the committee. One of the checks and balances between the executive and legislative branch, and again, how that one vote change can make a massive difference. I want to make sure I get big stuff out of the way. Okay, so that's how Congress is set up, what Congress does. Now, the Senate is fairly simple. The way people get elected to the Senate, each senator, there are 2 senators from each state, and each senator is elected on a statewide vote. We have 2 senators from North Carolina, Kay Hagan, a Democrat, and Richard Burr, a Republican. Both of those people are voted on by the entire state. So in 2014, Kay Hagan's up for re-election. She's going to be voted on by the entire state. However, in the House, it gets tricky, because North Carolina has 13 members of the House of Representatives. And the idea for the House of Representatives is to have one representative who represents a smaller percentage of a population of a state. So the senator represents the entire state. A member of the House of Representatives represents 700,000, roughly 700,000 people within the state. And in North Carolina, there are 13, so theoretically the math, because of the way population distribution works and things like that, doesn't necessarily mean, but theoretically each of the 13 members of the House of Representatives from North Carolina represent 700,000 people in the state. Um, okay, so, and one person can't have two representatives, so all the representatives, have 700,000 different people, and those people are in certain geographic areas, and so you have representatives that come from specific districts, which are geographic areas with, people in them, roughly. Again, I say 700,000. If you look on the slides, you can see examples from North Carolina of how the districts are drawn. So the 11th District of North Carolina is kind of the western part of the state. The person from the 11th District represents that western part. That person from the 11th District is probably going to be concerned about issues that are of concern from people from the Appalachian Mountains. Probably tourism would be a big one. I don't know if there's a lot of coal mining in that part of western North Carolina, but that could be something. I think mostly be tourism, right? Poverty is probably an issue. That's sad. So yeah, that's what that's about. One of the state government holds a huge role in the makeup of Congress. Okay, specifically the House of Representatives, because each state, the state legislature, decides how the boundary lines for each district in the state are going to be drawn. In North Carolina, we have 13 districts, which means we have 13. The state has to be divided up into 13 different pieces. Who's going to do that dividing? Who's going to make sure each piece has an equal number of people? Who is going to decide if those pieces that they're divided up are divided up fairly? It's the state legislature. The state legislature can either draw the lines themselves, or they can pass, a law that appoints some type of committee to do it. Oftentimes, when the legislature is not drawing the lines themselves, the law calls for a either bipartisan or nonpartisan committee to be created to draw the lines. The idea is that the bipartisan or nonpartisan committee that draws the lines will draw the lines in a way that is fair to everybody, that makes sense, that the average person would look at a district and say, I can see how this district can exist. This district makes sense in terms of being, representing a geographic region with, a specific diversity of people within that region. So instead of like we have the 12th district right now, which I pointed out is a sliver that runs through basically I-85 in North Carolina. It starts a little bit in Greensboro, High Point, and then the section of Charlotte that votes Democrat, and it just goes right down that I-85 corridor. That would be a district that people are like, why are people from Greensboro in the same district as people from Charlotte? Wouldn't it make more sense that everybody from Greensboro be in the same district? That's sort of what is conceived of to be fair. But that's not how North Carolina does things. North Carolina draws districts mostly for partisan advantage. So In North Carolina, the party that's in control of the legislature draws the district lines. Up until 2010, that was generally Democrats. And historically, Democrats have drawn district lines that are more fair to people, and historically, Democratic controlled states have created bipartisan or nonpartisan committees to draw the lines for the state, so that the district lines that are drawn are fair to everyone, are representative of the state, make geographic sense, things like that. Historically, Democrats, again, just do that more than Republicans do. Not that Republicans don't do it. Republicans certainly do, but Democrats have been known to do it more, to set up these draw lines fairer and set up these nonpartisan committees more than Republicans. 2010, that's kind of changed a lot. So Republicans, continue in the states where they don't have laws on that, redistrict to their party's advantage. Democrats, in this increasingly polarized and partisan environment we live in, have decided that they might be redistricted out of existence, which, by the way, this process of drawing district lines for representation in the House of Representatives for partisan purposes is known as gerrymandering. That's an important term, gerrymandering. Democrats have decided that maybe it's time they start doing some partisan redistricting. So both sides are playing on the same page now, yay, or something. So yeah, there's a video on there from The Daily Show. There are a couple videos on there about gerrymandering. One explains how gerrymandering works, and the other one is about how gerrymandering helps create districts that are the incumbent's just going to get reelected again and again and again. So in the U.S. House of Representatives, roughly 90 to 95% of the members get reelected every single year. As we saw on that one Daily Show video, there are 35-ish seats that are considered that could go either for Democrats or Republicans at this current moment. So out of 435, 35, less than 10% of the seats are sort of truly up for grabs, unless there's a very unique situation, such as some major national catastrophe, or the person that is either the Democratic or Republican nominee in the supposed safe district for the Democrat or Republican nominee says something really dumb, like Republicans are fond of saying that, this is a Democratic hyperbolic, suggestion, but God likes it when women get raped and babies are made from rape. When a Republican says that or something like that, it gets dicey for them, and even most Republican districts will vote for the Democrat. If the Democrat says something like, Hamas isn't really all that bad. Osama bin Laden was right on some things. Even Berkeley, California, one of the most liberal Democratic places, is not likely going to vote for the Democrat that says Osama bin Laden got some things right. So, that's that. You can look over the PowerPoint for more info. Though the census is really important. Every 10 years there's a census. The elections that take place on the census year are very important because the people that get elected in 2010, 2020, 2030 will be the ones that are redrawing the lines based upon the census. Now, the census counts every single person in America and where they live. Every day, every year, people are moving around the country. So, the lines that are drawn in 2010 that make up roughly equal population districts, in 2020, you may have District 12 in North Carolina that has 1.5 million people in it, and District 11 now has 350,000 people in it. And each one should have about 700,000 in it. So that's a huge, population shift, so you need to redraw the districts. So the districts are redrawn every 10 years based upon the census. So the people that are elected in 2010, 2020, etc., get to redraw those lines, and thus those are some of the most important elections ever to vote in because they can help set up the political agenda, the makeup of the House of Representatives, and the makeup of the state legislatures for the next decade. So something to keep in mind, I guess. And that was that. So enjoy Congress and look for the president soon. Go team.